Hey, thanks for clicking on my video. This is Rocky, and this review will be for episode 5 of Constantine. Before getting into the review, I just want to say a couple things about this show. There's a lot of rumors right now stating, that it's canceled or will be canceled. But as things sit right now, what's happened is basically NBC has halted production of season 1 at 13 episodes. And basically just means they haven't, ordered, what would be considered a full season run of, like around 20 episodes or so. So they've stopped season 1 at 13 episodes, at which point everything's been filmed. So production's stopped, but nothing's been canceled as of yet. So right now we're kind of just in this waiting period where basically the network's trying to see what those final numbers are. Because again, what's happening with Constantine is, due to the Friday night time slot that it's on, it's actually like air night viewings, ratings and numbers are kind of low, but it's making up a lot of numbers through DVR and online viewing and things like that. So in my personal opinion, what I think is happening is the network is basically seeing that Constantine does have potential, but it's in a bad time slot. So I'm thinking and I'm hoping that they're taking this time to evaluate where they can interject Constantine throughout the week in a better time slot before announcing, season 2 for the show. That's my personal opinion, and that's, where I'm trying to stay positive, because I'm really, really behind the show. I'm really enjoying Constantine, like I've said in my first video and everything. This is a show I've really been waiting for since I first heard the announcing for it. So definitely, if you guys want to go ahead and support Constantine and let NBC know how much you enjoy the show, what you can do is, if you're on Twitter, is you can tweet at NBC Constantine with the hashtag #SaveConstantine. I'll go ahead and put a link to their Twitter down below in the description as well for you guys to make it a little bit easier. But yeah, just the main thing we can do as fans is watch the show. And, as many times as we can, as many places we can. Let your friends and family know. Anyone, that would be interested in this type of show, let them know. It's really picked up. I know episode 1 was pretty shaky just due to everything that happened with the casting and having to change things up. But from, episode to episode, it's been getting better and better. And they're opening up new story points, new story arcs that could be developed. So this is a show I'm strongly behind. I hope you guys are too. So just want to get that out of the way, give you guys some information there. Going to go ahead and get into kind of my review of the show, what I liked about it. And then go ahead and stick around, as after that I'm going to basically have a geek out about the Spectre. Give you guys a little bit more information about that character, as he was, his host was basically presented within this episode. So, alright, let's go ahead and get into, I really enjoyed the beginning of the episode. As one thing that a lot of fans online have been complaining about is not seeing basically, John Constantine smoke as much. Now, it may seem kind of trivial, but it is, a strong point of his characters. In the comics, he develops cancer and, basically dying and everything like that. So it's a strong, part of the comic. And I gotta say, in this episode, I haven't seen anyone actually smoke a cigarette on, network television, quite some time. And this episode, we get quite a few instances of Constantine smoking. So I know that's probably gonna, make some people shy off a little bit, but, for those hardcore fans that have been wanting that, like I said, this show is going to give payoff to the fans. They're doing the best they can to do that. So in this first scene, we basically get Zed going over the map, trying to figure something out, trying to get some kind of psychic hit. Nothing's working. And in the background, we have John working on a kind of a mirror machine that was used during seances. And he basically tests it out on Zed, and it puts her in a hypnotic state, which triggers a psychic connection between her and the map, which is something he wanted. So we see, she's definitely still John's guinea pig, as he's trying to essentially enhance her psychic abilities so that he can better use them to figure out what's going on with this rising darkness. So that's something that's definitely going to get repeated throughout the series, is just, this sense of John pushing her to meet what he needs, essentially. So, that just goes back to Constantine's complete ability to use those around him to get what he wants. Whether, sometimes people get hurt by it, but, it's just that part of his character being shown. So one of the high points of the episode was definitely meeting Jim Corrigan, or Detective Jim Corrigan, who in the comics is one of the hosts of the Spectre. And it's kind of nice in this show is we get basically to kind of see through his eyes a little bit what it is to, peel back that veil between reality and magic. And, he's seeing this ghost and he's shooting at it, nothing's working, and he's trying to basically, make that make sense in his head based on his upbringing and things. So through that, we get a lot of interactions between he and John. And one of my favorites was shortly after they first met, John, gives him his card, which, still reads Master of the Dark Arts. And, John has this kind of grin on his face, and, Corrigan is not impressed by it at all. And it seriously just deflates Constantine. And, you see that on Matt Ryan's face, how he just, goes from a smile to a frown. And it's just that nod back to the first episode where, he had basically said, I should change that to Petty Dabbler, and, I'm getting new cards. It's just that nice, connection back to the first episode. And just, we get a lot of, it seems like, when they cast all these new characters, it seems that they're, specifically finding people that have like natural chemistry with Matt Ryan, like Emmett Scanlon, who plays Corrigan. I mean, it seems like those two have been working with each other forever, just the way they act. I mean, it's the same way with Chaz and Zed, as well as Papa Midnite later in this episode. So I'm really enjoying just seeing that interplay of these actors and how tight-knit they seem already. So another good thing that we get through Corrigan is we get a little more information about Zed's past. Basically, she's a runaway, and she ran away from her family. He didn't specifically say parents. He says family. So I think this is kind of a Easter egg nod to the Resurrection Crusade cult that Zed belonged to in the comics. It was basically ran by her father, and Zed was basically chosen to be the new Virgin Mother, basically, of the new Messiah. So we get that, nod to her character, and that, that's definitely an arc I would love to see presented on the show. They definitely would have to change some things. But I'm seeing, these references between that and previous episode where she mentioned, strict upbringing, and, we've seen her hold the cross and things like that. So I think those are all kind of nods to that. And the biggest thing we get, out of the time with Corrigan and Zed together is we see her vision towards the end where, Corrigan's bleeding and his face is kind of changing partway to a skull, and he's surrounded with this green energy. So that's definitely, a huge reference to the Spectre, which is what Corrigan becomes in the comic. So again, after the review, I'll go into a little bit more detail about the Spectre, but that's just, again, it was very awesome to see. I mean, like I said, they're doing a lot of these payoffs to the fans and, developing all these arcs that I definitely want to see get played out. So we also get some time with Chaz in this episode where, he's basically constantly going after this masked, ghost that's killing people with scissors or shears. And we see, what happens to him. He basically gets killed, but he comes back. So basically Chaz is Wolverine at this point. Okay, not really, but, you kind of get that sense. It's kind of like he dies, he comes back, and he gets healed. Now I'm thinking that's probably some type of connection to the tattoo we briefly see on his chest. To me, it looked very similar to like a snake eating its tail, or, various other symbols that throughout time have been associated with, eternity, immortality, things like that. So it also looked very familiar to the logo of the Millennium series, if any of you guys watched that previously, but I'm getting a feeling that it's somewhat connected to that, whether he was cursed with this immortality, which is probably the case because he hangs out with John. But I'm hoping we'll see, maybe a more Chaz-centric episode later on where we kind of get a little bit more about his backstory. Also in this episode, which was really nice, is we get to see Papa Midnite again. And Michael Shaw he's continuing to perform Papa Midnite brilliantly. We get a lot more of him in this episode than the previous episode he was in with the record. Now, we don't see any kind of reference to the voodoo doll that was at the end of that previous episode, so, I'm sure that's something that'll come up in a later episode, but we get, again, a lot of interactions between Papa Midnite and John in this episode where they're kind of going back and forth, basically, Papa Midnite referring that, John just, grabs what he needs from all these people's religions and history and, garbles it together into, different things. And he doesn't have a lot of respect for John. And, John, refers to what he does with voodoo as, letting, spirits within him. And that's something, he's constantly avoiding, is letting anything enter him because he's an exorcist. But we get a lot of, back and forth between the two characters. And it makes for some very comical moments, especially in the car ride. But we find out that basically Papa Midnite's been, trying to help these people, well, as, help them help himself because they're paying him, but to speak to their deceased loved ones or deceased people to try and, speak to them, get absolution, whatever the case may be. But due to this twisting, rising darkness that's, been going on in the series so far, it's twisted and it's actually resurrected these spirits. So these are the spirits we see throughout the episode. The special effects done when the spirits appear and disappear, I thought were done very well. It's kept very subdued, which is great. And we get basically to defeat these spirits or to send them back, John and Papa Midnite basically have to combine forces, combine their magic. And out of this, John basically makes a deal that essentially if things work, then he wants to ask Papa Midnite's sister about this rising darkness and how it can be stopped. As throughout the episode, Papa Midnite speaking to the skull, which is the skull of his sister, which he, killed her in the comics, which it seems they definitely reveal that in this episode as well. That essentially, kind of both Midnite and Constantine souls are essentially damned because of what they've done in the past, right? So that's what John, wants to get out of this, is he's trying to, again, figure out how to stop this darkness. So basically what happens with that is, they figure out that their magic combined isn't, strong enough to stop these spirits or send them back. Is Papa Midnite technically isn't the one that rose them. It was the people that wanted to speak with them. Through their guilt basically fueled the resurrection of these spirits. So the people that resurrected them or have that guilt need to release that in order for the spirits to go back and find peace, which does happen by the end of the episode. Again, the special effects of the spirits disappearing, very well done, I thought. So John gets to, call in this favor, but we don't exactly hear what Papa Midnite asks his sister. So, he could have twisted what John was looking for. More than likely, he did. But what we basically get the sense of is that essentially there's nothing John can do, and that someone close to him is going to betray him that allows this darkness to come to power. What this darkness is, it could be Nergal. I'm personally thinking it's probably the first, making his presence felt, but either way, we get this hint that, John's going to get betrayed by someone close to him. Naturally, there's a lot of rumors that it's going to be Zed as the most likely, suspect that's going to betray him, which could be the case. I'm going with the long shot that it's actually referring to John's twin brother that died in the womb. As he was basically strangled by his umbilical cord by John as when they were both babies. That's presented in the comics. It hasn't been hinted at in the show at all. Like I said, so it's kind of a long shot, but it, that character brings up some different story arcs in the comics that would be great to see in the show, and again gives that fan payoff. So that's just what I'm kind of thinking on that. So all around, this was definitely I think the most solid episode of the series. Again, each episode keeps getting better and better between the acting, writing, and we're getting the introduction of Jim Corrigan, and we're seeing Papa Midnite again, and we're seeing again how John uses the magic he needs to complete the situation. So he's borrowing from different religions, different theologies, and things like that. So very powerful episode, good payoff for the fans, I thought, with the smoking and things like that people have been asking for. So I very much enjoyed the episode. I hope you guys did too. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about the episode as well as this video. And if you have any questions about any of the characters or anything that went on in the episode, definitely put that down in the description as well. I'll be happy to go over that with you. If you liked the video, I'd ask you to go ahead and give me a thumbs up and share the video with anyone you think might be interested in it. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channels. I will be doing reviews weekly of Constantine, as well as the other Marvel and DC television shows going on right now. Alright, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and start geeking out about the Spectre, so I hope you guys stick around for this. So when I do geek out, it's basically just giving some extra information about a character or some part of an episode, something just, needs a little bit more information on, just to kind of, feed the geek and those that need it. So in this, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Spectre. So basically, like I said, we get that vision from Zed, seeing that, essentially seeing Corrigan dying and turning into the Spectre, or at least surrounded by that energy. So originally in the comics, Jim Corrigan is killed, and basically his soul is denied entry into the afterlife by the Voice, and he's sent back to Earth to enact divine justice, and ends up taking the name Spectre. Now, this character has evolved throughout, comic history, as most characters do. And he was eventually revealed that the Spectre was actually the fallen angel Aztar, who basically, rebelled with Lucifer and asked for forgiveness, and his penance was basically to be the embodiment of God's wrath or God's vengeance on Earth. And he has to have some kind of mortal host as kind of a balancing moral balance when he's enacting his revenge. As it's seen when he doesn't have a host, he goes vengeance crazy, like vengeance gone wild, basically. And, the smallest crime, smallest criminal, he will just wipe out. And, this is, essentially, like I said, the embodiment of God's vengeance. So think, first born in Egypt kind of level of, almost genocide he's capable of. So again, he needs that mortal host. In this case, it's, Corrigan. It's that mortal host for him to give him that moral guideline. He's recently been rebooted in the New 52 series that's going on in the comics. Again, it's Corrigan as the host, but he was basically tricked by the Phantom Stranger. Sorry, apologize for that. So the Phantom Stranger basically tricked Corrigan into going to this warehouse, and basically he ends up getting killed and becomes a Spectre that way. And at that point, he's told by the Voice what his responsibilities are. The Voice is essentially DC's version, or one aspect of their version of God. So as far as power level goes, I mean, as he is the embodiment of God's wrath, there's almost nothing that the Spectre can't do. I mean, we're talking, limitless strength, high levels of invulnerability, very powerful magic, available. He can warp reality. The Spectre's known for basically twisting what a criminal does to punish them by. In one aspect, there was a Dr. Light character in the comics, and as penance, or to basically revenge what he had done, he was essentially turned into an ever-burning candle, right? So that, you get that sense of, very creative deaths or torture for these villains. I mean, almost Saw-like, or, just, in some comics it kind of gets that level. But yeah, I mean, anything he can think of, he can do. The only things he's really vulnerable against are, high levels of magic, as in on par with him or greater, of which there's very few. I mean, there are times where his power can be drained if he does something strenuous, but, there's almost, no weaknesses to this character. So he is a very, very powerful character. So when they do introduce him in the show, which, would not happen definitely by the end of this first 13 episodes, that would be something I'd imagine, like a third or fourth season is. By that point, they have to build the world around him before they introduce this character that can basically break the world that they made. So that's just a little bit more information about the Spectre. If you guys have any additional questions about the Spectre, go ahead and put those down in the description. And I hope you enjoyed this geek out. And again, if you guys haven't subscribed to my channel, please go ahead, as I would really appreciate it. And again, I'll be doing more of these geek outs, especially when we go off season for these shows. So if you guys have any suggestions for things, for any geek out videos you'd like, go ahead and put those down in the description below. And if you guys have gone ahead and subscribed to my channel, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I hope you stayed around for this geek out, and hope you enjoyed the review. That being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye.